If you're a parent, or even if you're not a parent, if you've been in a store, you've probably seen this expression. The beauty about children is that they express things that we as adults continue to express, except it's not as outwardly seen. It's inward. We learn how to cover it up because when we're little, we see that how people respond to us. But there's this phrase that just keeps coming up, and I heard it when I was little. I used to say it. I heard it when my boys were growing up, and I'm hearing it now with my grandchildren. Is this saying that is, do I have to? And why? Always questioning. And even if I was to try to explain and go through all of it, it seems pointless. I understand they need some information, we need to, but there reaches a point as a parent or as a grandparent, it's just, hearing this constant kind of, do I have to? As if, well, okay, no, you don't have to. And that's interesting because, like I said, maybe we're not little children throwing that face out a lot, but a lot of times I think spiritually we're doing that. When somebody tells us to do something, when the government requires something, when your boss tells you to go and take care of something, or, you're thinking to yourself, do I have to? We might be using a little bigger boy attitude and saying, but we're still thinking it. We still question whether we have a right to or not. And when it comes to God, that is a dangerous question. Is that when we ask that question, we say that, when we hear things that maybe we're not comfortable with, that God is instructing us or trying to help us to understand, a lot of times we have that kind of inside thought that, well, do I have to? And what's amazing to me is that what we don't understand, just like our children don't understand, is that we hold the power of happiness or misery. As a parent, as a grandparent, we understand that lesson. I'm bigger than you. I have more belts than you. I can do a lot of things to make your life very miserable. And God, it's even worse because God absolutely has not all of that as well, but tenfold does He have all of the power, the ability, but He has the right to. There's a lot of times that I'll say that to my kids, and maybe, I'm not always accurate, but I'm telling you to do something. But when it's God, it's different, because everything He tells us is true and pure. And so for us to act like that and to think to ourselves, well, do I really have to do this? No, actually you don't. That is what is so amazing, is that with God, you don't have to do anything. You don't. When I look at Deuteronomy 30, verse 19, I call the heaven and the earth witness against you today, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse before. Therefore, choose life, that you and your offspring may live. He has always given us that choice. You can choose to be rebellious and do what you want, or you can choose to take the blessings, take the miracle of life, take those things. And that's the choice that always comes down to. There's a lot of times that we rebel. We just have that within us that we seem to want to rebel. But you know what? With God, the beauty is, honestly, He wants somebody to choose to want to do it themselves, to choose, not to force them to do that. So no, you don't. But you know what? God's also not going to force you to be saved either. A lot of times, we've seen where people are in a risk, in a victim situation, and they want to be saved, but you can't ever imagine that somehow that a drowning person, as a lifeguard approached them, said, no, I'm okay. No, I don't want you. But that's what we do spiritually. God is constantly bringing to us the ability to be saved, but yet we turn around and we seem to reject it. In the same motion of floundering. So He's not going to do that. And that's why a part of the message to Timothy by Paul, he says in 1 Timothy 3, 1 Timothy chapter 2, the second part of 3, he says, our God our Savior, who desires all people to be saved and to come to the knowledge of the truth. He desires it, There's nothing in there that says He ever forces it, that He won't. But you have to understand you have consequences with your choices, just like everything. A lot of the times we need to realize that this entire world has been corrupted by sin. The environment itself has been corrupted from the purity of the Garden of Eden before the flood. It was beautiful. It was perfect. And through our sin, we inflicted so many things upon the environment as well as the consequences of other people's sins that have just continued to ricochet around us. But understand, you need to understand that, you don't have to. But you need to own up to the consequences that can happen. Paul says in Galatians chapter 6, verse 7 and 8, "Do not be deceived, God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap. For the one who sows to his own flesh will from the flesh reap corruption, but the one who sows from the Spirit will from the Spirit reap eternal life." So just understand that. You don't have to obey God, but also understand whenever you get your payment, your reward for whatever direction you choose, that you're going to have to deal with that. If you choose to go after the things of the world, then that's what you're going to receive. And he says that type of corruption. And don't think that you can mock God. That's what I thought was interesting, is somehow you're sitting there making fun of God. That somehow you think that you can sit and make fun of God and go, I can do what I want, and I'm still going to be good. No, you don't mock God. You're going to receive what you deserve. And to me, whenever you say that, and you say, well, do I have to do it? I think it reflects the part that is so dangerous within us, and this is the selfishness, this self-serving attitude that we really all have. And it's really hard to put that into check. Because honestly, all sin originates out of self first. Me. I'm thinking of me. And then I commit a sin. I lie to you. I think of me first, and then I murder you. I think of me first, and then I commit adultery against my spouse. I think of me first. It's selfish. So it's one of the attitudes that we have is when we think about what God is wanting us to do things, and we say, well, do I have to do that? Do I really have to do that? Well, understand that it's really reflecting how much selfishness you have and how little faith you have in what God is talking about. And, a lot of times that view, to me, it takes what God has given to us as a blessing and turned it into like it's some form of burden that we just have to do it. Kind of like dues at a club or some sort of initiation process that we just take what God has given to us and somehow we try to treat it like it's burdensome. We don't like certain words, and I think that in 1 John chapter 5, verse 33, it says, "For this is the love of God, that we keep His commandments, and His commandments are not burdensome." Now, to a person who is this attitude, well, do I have to? Well, they come across as commands, they come across as things that are very burdensome, and they're bothersome, and they're restricting me from being able to practice what I want, do what I want. Where's my freedom in this? Freedom that we want is actually rebellion. It's just rebellion against God. So one of the good ones that I hear a lot, a real application of this, do I have to, is do I have to go to church? And I'm going to tell you, just like God has always said, no, you don't have to. No. People say it all the time, I don't need a church to be saved. No, you don't. You need Him to be saved. But if you want to have Him, then you need to listen to what He says. And when you hear what He has to say, you will change that. Because it comes down to a matter of interest. What is your interest? Because again, we're very selfish. So if it's something that you're interested in, most people will go and do it. They will do it. You can tell what people's interests are based on what they're involved in, what they will sacrifice to do in order to accomplish what they're interested in. And they will. People do it all the time. I do it for mountain biking. There's a lot of things that I know I catch myself applying this type of a lesson to me and saying, I sacrifice where I could go do this, or even if I buy something around my mountain biking, versus being able to put it in my pickup, or if I put it in my pickup, I'm sacrificing. But that's my priority. Where are our priorities? Is church one of them? How important is it? On your deathbed's too late. It's a little late. And when we start to understand what is wonderful about it and the danger of not wanting to be together, the Hebrew writer, and I talked about that this morning, is how he was trying to encourage those Christians to remember to come together physically, be together. Because of the importance of knowing and seeing people that would take the time, show the interest to be in one place together, united in spirit and truth. And that's why he says, do not forsake coming together. Do not forsake ecclesia, called out, the church. Because that's what he's saying when he says, don't fail to assemble. That's ecclesia. That's called out. That's the word church. So when you say, well, I don't have to go to church, actually, you do. Because he says there that if you need to come together in the beautiful purpose. But if you're thinking his commands are burdensome, then, well, that's just another burden. Another burden I have to bear. And honestly, let's go back and you can think about the number of hours that you spend watching television or YouTube or gaming compared to what it's required when we come together with a few hours out of our lives to come down here to be with one another. It's pretty sad. And the Apostle Paul, talking to the Corinthians, in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, describes as they had come together that what would happen. There would be some that would bring songs, like what Jack did. There'd be some that would bring a prayer. There would be some that would bring these things together. And when I get to see the other brethren participating and bringing all that together, that it does one thing, and he says in there, all the things that we do together, that what is so important is it builds up the body. Now, how can you build up the body if it's not together, if the parts aren't there? It's kind of like going to the gym and forgetting your arms. Okay, we can work on the legs today, but what if you didn't bring the legs or the arm because they didn't show up? And you go to the gym. Oh, we assembled, but I have no arms and legs. Okay, well, I'll do crunches. It may sound silly, but isn't it the same? We come together, but yet we are missing so many parts. How are we supposed to do, like what Paul said in 1 Corinthians 14 there, about bringing something together in order to help build up one another? And we can't do it virtually. We really can't. It has to be physical. That's the standard, and God knows what is really precious and beautiful for us, more than we do. So do I have to go to church? No. No, you do not have to go to church. Do you love God? Then you'll love His children. And you'll love being around them too. So, by not coming, we also then turn around and minimize what we feel about worship. It shows what we think is a priority again, and showing that type of attitude towards what should be very important to us. Do I have to hang out with Christians? No, you don't have to. You can hang out with scoundrels all day long. But you're going to become what you hang with. You really are. Now, we can't avoid everybody. That's the thing. It's not about that you need to hang out with Christians, but it's the fact of who's associating and who's influencing one another. And coming back to the idea of what Paul is expressing here in Romans chapter 12, verse 10, he says, love one another with a brotherly affection. Outdo one another, showing honor. You ever seen kids compete? Trying to be number one and stuff? It's kind of that, no, I'm going to honor you. No. It doesn't happen as much anymore because people don't do it as much, and that's holding the door for somebody. No, you go first. No, you go first. We show one another. That's that selflessness that really has to be trained in us, because even though we're adults, we tend to be just like little children. It's a me first. And our society really does help to reinforce that. And again, the idea of being with Christians, it's a matter of interest. Who are you enjoying the company with the most? Is it all the people of the world? Or is it with Christians? Or is it, when I go to church, I associate with them and that's enough? That's a weakness. That's one of the problems that we have, in there. So there are some consequences that we need to understand whenever we're not wanting to be around Christians. And the fact that we are going to probably be influenced by others. We see that in 1 Corinthians 15, where Paul warns about not being conformed to the world, that we need to be transformed. We need this idea of bringing ourselves together and having that balance, helping balance me out because we share something together. And it's iron sharpening iron as well when we look at that. The problem is, as well, is how are you going to influence them when you're the one that's overwhelmed? So a lot of times we lose our influence because they look at us. We don't go to church because we don't have to. We don't hang out with Christians because we don't have to. Yet we're going to try to preach to them. And that's the hypocrisy that the world does see very clearly. It also defines on what we love, what we, again, really care about. Because if you love God, you love His children. And when His children come together, there would be no other place greater and more precious than to be with those who He loves, because you love Him. So to me, again, not saying, well, I don't have to hang out with Christians, shows a lack of love for those other Christians as well. So do I have to? Instead of talking about that, one thing I thought of is consider the alternate. Consider the flip side of this. Just like what He told the children of Israel when He gave them the law. He went through and He described some extremely graphic, horrible things. The things that He said that were going to happen to them was everything from pain and suffering in the family, in the children, the health, their cities, their nation, so many horrible things. And we can look at the Bible and see where when they would follow God, they prospered. They were invincible. They were exactly what God said. And when they wandered away and would not come back, they suffered horribly. The book of Judges is one of the most evident periods of time that we should look at and realize, I don't want to do that. I don't want to wander back and forth and be in that cycle because of what can happen. And so God has given us that choice. But remember, you're going to reap what you sow. If you sow into righteousness, you're going to reap righteous things that are good. If you sow and spend all your energy and interest into something that is ungodly, then you're going to reap the things that are ungodly. So you're prepared to listen to that and follow? Who are you going to follow? The Hebrew writer says in Hebrews 1:1, God at various times and various ways spoke in times past to the fathers by the prophets. In these last days He has spoken to us by His Son, whom He has appointed heir of all things, through whom He also made the worlds. There's nobody else that we should be listening to. We shouldn't be listening to the prophets of old because we now have it. It's all been fulfilled in Him. Are you listening to God through His Son? Or are you listening to man's philosophies and being distracted away? And the bottom line is, you can be like that little kid. You don't have to. But remember the consequences. If you're with us this evening and there's something that we can do to help you in your relationship with Him, and you've had this attitude, I hope that you'll correct it. If you're online with us and you're streaming with us, I hope that if you're having a challenge with it, I hope that you would reach out to us and let us as well help you with this. And we're all struggling with it. There's times I may be stronger and you may be weaker. And there's times that I'll be weaker and you're going to be stronger. And that's the whole beauty of the body together, is that when we have one part, one member that's weaker, the other parts of the body can then enforce and lift up. So if we can help you at all in your relationship with Him, I hope that you would let us know while we stand and sing the invitation song.
Why keep Jesus waiting, waiting in the cold? He will bear you gently, gently to the fold. See him sole and open, I implore. Why keep Jesus waiting, waiting at the door? Oft he knocketh softly, softly o'er and o'er. Hear him sole and open, I implore. Why keep Jesus pleading, pleading at the door? He would be your Savior ever, evermore. Love him sole and open, I implore. Why keep Jesus waiting, walking at the door? Soon he'll cease his pleading, yes, forevermore. Come, poor soul, obey him, I implore. Please be seated.